Listen to the Vibes.
Welcome, everyone, to another episode of Listen to the Vibes. I'm very happy to welcome back the one and only Larry Kutcher here. He's got a new album out, and we're going to talk a little bit about that and see what he's up to nowadays. So, Larry, how's it been going, man?
Great. It's good to see you again, Kyle.
Hey, same
It's
here.
almost a year ago that we last spoke when I released the first album, Kindred Souls, the solo piano album. So yeah, this one worked out almost exactly a year later. I finally released my second album, and this one's not just a solo piano. This time I stretch out. I've got some electronic prog pieces, some symphonic prog. I've got some like sort of jazzy world music. I got some acoustic guitar pieces. I love guitar, and I'm not any kind of virtuoso on the guitar, but I just love the guitar. So there's a couple of guitar pieces. There's even sort of like a Zen meditative ambient soundscape called the Lotus Garden, as Zappa would say, Shanti right now. And there's a couple solo piano, of course, has to be some piano in there. But so this one definitely is stretching out. My plan, there's this trio of albums. My next one, I plan to go full out crazed, prog metal, high intense, nothing too subtle, just like full on, so this is sort of the halfway point, stretching out a little bit. Our mutual friend, Billy James, who I think was the one who introduced us, Billy the extraordinary. What's that?
Aunt B.
Aunt B, that's right. I mean, Billy and I, met way back in the 80s, and we would jam in my living room. I'd set up my keyboards, he'd bring a drum set over, and we both loved Zappa and all the same music. And Billy's been very kind to do some publicity for me on this one. And he even said, "Okay, Larry, I can't wait. I can't wait to hear you full force crazy on," so the next one will definitely be like sort of a no holds barred. But these pieces are a good sort of transition to that. And they're pieces that I wanted to get out there. Some of them were already written, and some of them are brand new. And sometimes you feel like you hear artists say this, but I think it's a good analogy. Sometimes you say, well, my music, they're my children, and you have to like give birth and let them go, right?
That's one way of putting it.
So these are my demented children. And, I don't know if you know this, when you and I did the interview last, I think it was like March or April, the first album had just come out. I broke my wrist in an accident.
No.
Like literally a couple of weeks after. I had a freak accident right in the middle of my new album, and it completely sidelined me for months.
Oh, dude.
I've never had an accident in my life like this. And I have like in my wrist here, I have a metal plate and a couple of screws. So I'm
Man, you really did it.
It was a severe break. The pain was like otherworldly. And of course, being a pianist, the thing I was most frightened about, God, will I ever be able to play again, and play the way I'm used to, Thank God. It took me 6 months of grueling physical therapy. And I'm okay. And I'm getting my chops back up, and because my original intention was to release this album in Christmas of 2023.
Really?
Yeah, I was hoping to have this follow-up album to Kindred Souls before Christmas, but then breaking my wrist I mean, I could hardly play up until that point, and so this album, because of that, it's very sentimental to me in the sense that, you know, this one was right on the what's the word I'm looking for? Right after I had all these fears of never being able to play, the keyboards again.
Yeah.
So it feels good to be, back in shape and releasing this music, and so I'm very, very excited about it.
Are you still playing with any other groups?
I've been doing, and I don't know if this is a product of the COVID thing. I've been doing like digital collaborations with folks, where I'm doing something in my studio and we're exchanging. But
Yeah.
I haven't done any like live playing with anyone, because it's only just been a few months since I could actually felt like I was up to snuff myself, you know. So yeah, so I haven't had the opportunity to work with anyone like live, and play out live. I've gone out and I've done a few solo piano little gigs just to test, how I would do physically, and so yeah, I'm kind of getting back into the just swing of things now.
How about with Steve Vai? Have you talked to him lately?
You know, we keep uh we keep sort of intersecting. Are you familiar with this website called I think it's called Discogs?
Oh yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I'm officially on there as an artist now. I'm finally in the database, and I'm also part of another one called All Music. So I guess I've arrived. I have my 2 albums on there, right? But
Right.
you also get credit for stuff that you've done and who you've worked through. And they finally added my credit with Steve Vai for the song that I wrote on the Flexible Leftover album called Little Pieces of Seaweed. And so we kind of overlapped there. And I also finally got credit for a song I co-wrote with Alan and Neil Morse of Spock's Beard called The Emperor's Clothes, which came out on Spock's Beard 10, I believe, which came out a few years back. And there's a whole jazz fusion piano section that I wrote with them. And so that was nice. So I'm starting to get like credits,
That's
on there,
awesome.
which is kind of nice. Kind of feel a little bit more official. Um, but Steve and I haven't had like direct contact. I know how to contact him, and for some reason I've been hesitating, and I don't know why. It's interesting that you bring him up because he's been on my mind. And because I remember when we first worked together, it was quite a while ago. That was back in 1984.
Wow.
That was quite a while ago. I mean, I met him when he had just barely left playing with Frank, and he was still living in Sylmar. He was pretty young guy, of course, amazing,
Oh
amazing
yeah.
musician. And of course, he's had a whole rich career, and
And I think it was in 85 when he started playing with David Lee Roth.
that's right. And I may have spoken with you in our last interview about this. I was actually a possible, this is, nobody's supposed to know this, a possible candidate for playing keyboards on that.
Oh, wow.
But Steve and I had a little bit of a fallout over the song Little Pieces of Seaweed that I wrote. We patched it up later, but I remember he sent me a postcard when he was on the tour from Japan, when he was on tour with David Lee Roth. And because we also had a little bit of a fallout over the spiritual thing.
Mhm.
Not a fallout, but just, when we met, he was very curious about my spirituality. I think I might have told you before, he thought I was in the Illuminati. He never met anyone like me. Matter of fact, the night we met, I was improvising in the studio, and he called up Frank Zappa right there in the studio and said, "Frank, I met this crazy genius guy. You got to meet him." And I was sitting there, in awe, because Frank Zappa was like my hero. If I was anybody was like a hero to me,
Mhm.
Frank Zappa was like the guy for me. Huge influence on me all my life. So to be in the studio with Steve Vai and having him tell Frank that I was this crazy genius he should meet, you got to understand that was like, for me, I was pretty young then. That was like a highlight of my life, right?
Yeah.
What when we met, Steve was messing around with sort of darker spirituality, Aleister Crowley. He was messing with some dark energy, and he was scared. And he sensed from me that I was discerning it. He could just feel it from me. I could feel it in his room. Something was weird. And so we started talking, and we ended up having hours and hours of discussion about spirituality, spiritual darkness, and I, of course, shared Christ with him. And initially, it was difficult for him to take that all in.
Right.
But from Japan, he sent me a postcard, and he said, "You know what, Larry? I've had time to think, and I'm reading the Bible, and I'm really
Wow.
getting into the Word." And I just felt so blessed from that. So I planted a seed,
That's awesome.
and it was really nice to hear from him, because we had a little bit of like musicians go through this, even the best of musicians. My God, look what happened between John Anderson and Chris Squire, for example.
Right.
Sometimes there's disagreements about money and about credit and who did what. And I was a little upset, long story short, with Steve for changing some of the lyrical content without telling me. And he added some stuff that let's just say I didn't approve of.
Right.
So we had a little tension. So it felt good to kind of like, reconcile about that, and once again, the whole thing of spirituality, that's the central theme in my life, because that's like the underpinning for me. So, of everything that I do, it's all underscored by my spiritual path, right? I can't separate that. And so, like I said, this particular album really reflects all of that. And but that was a long answer to whether Steve and I have been in contact.
Hey, that's cool though, man. It's
You
cool.
know,
I'm glad. Really
I
glad I got to hear that.
you've actually inspired me to contact him. I think sometimes you wonder when somebody gets that big, in their career. He's obviously a established name, successful artist, right?
Right.
In his niche. And then I think if I contacted Steve, sometimes you second guess yourself. Would he want to hear from me? Would he care? Silly little mechanizations you go through in your head, but you've inspired me to maybe finally do it once and for all. I've been wanting to. I remember even back then when I worked with him, I performed with him in a band that had Tommy Mars on keyboards, had Stu Hamm on bass, it had what's his name, the incredible drummer who worked with UK and all these people, and Alan Allsworth. I mean, it was like an all-star band. And I was like a front man doing my crazy seaweed thing. I was dressed up in black leotards, and I had real seaweed that I got at the beach that day before the performance. I literally wrapped myself up in seaweed. They didn't know I was going to do it. And I went on stage. Because Steve just said, Larry, do what you want. I trust you. Just go crazy, right? You know, he gave me carte blanche, right?
That sounds like Steve.
Yeah, and it was like a lot of fun. And these guys, they couldn't figure me out. Because like Tommy, for example, he goes, Larry, he goes, you're like the Rod Serling, Jim Morrison of rock. He goes, he said to me, he asked me if I was on acid. And I said, I don't even do drugs. And then he goes, are you like insane? And I go, no. I go, I can tell you everything I just did tonight. This was after the gig. I had done this huge improv, this crazy improv on the song, on the spot. I actually have a tape. I'll send you an MP3 of it. I actually have it.
Oh, that'd be cool.
Yeah, it expands the song from the album, Little Pieces of Seaweed. And so I proceeded to repeat back to Tommy Mars everything that I had said in the improv on stage like an hour earlier. I remembered my improv. And he goes, no, you're not crazy. You remembered everything, you know. And he goes, well, who are you? Where does all this come from? And even with Tommy, I shared Christ with Tommy.
Oh, wow.
And it freaked him out. It just, he couldn't put the two together. How could this guy be so free and so crazy and so like fearless on stage, you know, and come up with this weird stream of consciousness sort of poetry, you know? How can he do that? Because there's a stereotype that a Christian is an idiot, right?
Yeah, at least nowadays that
Yeah.
seems to be the stereotype.
Yeah, and so
You're a fanatic.
yeah, you're some kind of, you know, very
You're
narrow,
extreme,
right? Yeah, and
radical.
you live in a little bubble,
Right.
little Bible bubble, you know, and you have the IQ of plankton, and you know. So it was interesting rubbing shoulders with these kind of guys, you know. And Tommy at the time, he was a self-proclaimed hedonist, you know. But privately when we spoke, you know, he kind of told me about his Catholic background and how he was an altar boy. But at the end of our conversation, and I guess I'm defying it now 40 years, 30 years later, or whatever it is, he goes, don't you ever tell anyone we had this conversation. He would ruin his rep, right?
Oh, it's too late now.
Too late now. I guess I kind of, you know, I guess I kind of spilled the beans there. But
Well, this
yeah.
album's kind of a spiritual journey for you, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely. And the way I introduced the order of the songs also indicate each sort of path that I had explored growing up. So some of the songs were inspired by experiences that I had way back when I was 19, 20. A big part of the spiritual path that I explored when I was younger was shamanism. I was fascinated by Native American shamanism. And I was a big Jim Morrison fan, and I know he was heavily influenced by shamanism as a poet and as a performer. And I was fascinated by that idea of, you know, I guess the shaman was sort of the medicine man, the holy man that would go into the, you know, unseen realms and bring back information to the tribe, whether it be knowledge or healing or medicine. But he would go to those places where everybody else would be afraid to go to, right? And then, you know, I remember at that time there were books by Carlos Castaneda called The Adventures of Don Juan and Tales of Power. And so I was like 19 years old. I was living in Uptown Whittier, and I live right near the Whittier Hills. So I could walk up into the Whittier Hills, and you're literally in a wilderness.
Mm-hmm.
And I went there one time, and I actually met like an 80-year-old Native American Indian shaman who was there, who was surprised to see me, this young 19-year-old Italian, kid running around half naked, and he kind of took me under his wing, which I was honored by because I was Anglo. I wasn't, and we went out to the California desert near Edwards Air Force Base out there.
Mm-hmm.
And I stayed with him for a couple of weeks and sort of studied with him. And I know this will be controversial for some people hearing this, but he introduced me to peyote. And up to that point, I didn't drink, I didn't smoke. I was like, no drugs, I didn't even drink, I go for the gusto, right? I go for peyote. And you know how some people who had experimented with drugs in the past and then they moved on from it kind of are embarrassed about it, especially if you're a Christian.
Yeah.
They might be embarrassed or don't want to talk about it, or they'll denigrate it and say it was a horrible, evil thing. I'm not going to do that. I had, and this is going to get me in trouble. I know. I can just see some people when they see this. What can I say? I'm a very open person, I have to tell you, my experience with this guy out there in the desert in peyote was one of the most beautiful, extraordinary, transcendent experiences I ever had in my life. And once you do it, it stays with you. It changes your consciousness. You don't need to keep doing it. Yes, did I know at the time that it's probably not what Christ would want me to do? Yeah, I did know that. I take full responsibility for that. And I was somewhat conflicted because I was a Christian, but I did it. I kind of wanted to see how that compared to the state of being that you're in with the Holy Spirit. Chalk it up to youth, right? I mean, I was 19, for God's sakes.
Well, I mean, even the Amish let their kids go out and experience the world at one time to see if that's, they want to come back or not.
And my motivation wasn't to go party,
Right.
I mean, it was a serious intention for knowledge and for expansion. And the experience was beautiful. I mean, it brought me closer to the earth, to nature. And my heart felt beautiful. It was a beautiful experience. I didn't have to repeat it. I didn't go on to take more. I didn't have to. That one time was all I needed. And I was very grateful for him to even want to take on someone like me, a very unlikely candidate, But he felt something in me that he felt it was worth sharing. He saw something in me. He could see it. Anyway, it's a roundabout way getting back to the song on the album, The Shaman's Path. So The Shaman's Path is a musical sort of movie of that experience.
Mm-hmm.
I'm kind of sharing it through sound. And that piece, when you hear it, you could see, why, in terms of where it goes. The piece, The Lotus Garden, that's another piece, that was about my time studying. I studied at, there's a guy named Paramahansa Yogananda, who had temples all over Southern California. And he's influenced people like John Anderson of Yes. He's a very well-known sort of Indian from India, sort of spiritual, I don't know what you would describe him. People call him different things, but he's very well known in terms of the annals of spirituality. Paramahansa Yogananda. Yes, I think a temple was called Self-Realization Temple. There was one in Hollywood, there was one in Westwood. And for like a 3-year period, I studied there and took all that in. And it's very, and it combines various aspects of Zen and Eastern religions and Hinduism And I found it once again, intellectually and aesthetically very beautiful. There was beautiful music, there was beautiful poetry, there was beautiful sort of philosophical underpinnings. And once again, I just wanted to take it in and to learn and to grow. And so the Lotus Garden is a reflection of that time when I studied there. And it is a very free form soundscape. You know, it isn't the traditional musical composition, you know, the verse, chorus, bridge. It's just like when you listen to it, it's just waves of ethereal sort of sound. So that kind of captured that. There's a piece on there that what reflects my walk with Christianity, of course, as well, and which is my chosen path.
Right.
I want to make that clear here to everyone. I am a Christian. I follow Jesus Christ. I don't follow Krishnamurti. I don't follow Paramahansa Yogananda. I don't follow shamans. I studied with them and enjoyed what I learned. But I never followed them. And yeah, so one of the pieces, it's a piece about forgiveness, which I believe Christ is the ultimate teacher of the whole concept of forgiveness.
Yes.
You know, so yeah, so like I said, each song is just like a little representation of this spiritual journey I've been on. And the whole purpose of studying all these things, all these years, I've been doing this since I was a kid. I was going to be a Catholic priest. I decided I wanted to be a Catholic priest when I was 9 years old.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. I started the first Catholic folk mass in the United States at St. Pius X in Norwalk, California. I was like 10, playing the guitar. That's when the mass went from like Latin and pipe organ Gothic music to like folk music. And I remember the old guard thought the hippies and the beatniks were taking over, right? I was like 10, 11 years old as a worship leader in the Catholic Church. You know, where we lived, we had a fence. I could go through a hole in the fence and it was the parking lot of the church. I grew up in the Catholic Church. I spent more time in the church than I did at home for reasons. And I knew I was going to be a priest. I was studying to become a priest. So as you can see, from a very young age, this has been who I am, right? And ultimately, this music that I create, for me, that's the ultimate gift that God gave me. Being able to create and play and share music is the greatest gift I've ever been given in this world, in this life, you know, to be able to do this. And as far as I'm concerned, like all this music that I release, it's his music. It comes through me. I am a disciplined vessel, you know. I started studying classical violin at the age of 6, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I studied music, you know, and then I went to guitar, and then I went to drums, and eventually to keyboards, and piano. And so I took the time and I worked my tail, you know. So I got into the discipline of learning the craft. But once I got to a point where I felt like I was at a level enough, I learned to then, and here's the sort of weird irony to some people. Musicians and creative people understand this, but after everything I learned, and this goes along with spirituality too, I realized I needed to let it go. To step up, I needed to step out of the way and then let that music come through me. In other words, now I can harness it. God gave me a particular personality. I have a certain set of aesthetic tastes, right? So there's certain styles that I gravitate towards, right? So, and I have the skill to harness it. And this ties along once again with shamanism. That's why shamanism is important to me. The shaman is this vessel. He lets go and lets stuff come through him. It's that same thing. That's what I do. The best music I do is I just sit down and I get out of the way. Most of the music I don't sit before and write down and notate. Sometimes I do it that way, but most of the time I feel led by spirit. I sit down, I let it come through me, and I feel that's his music. I'm interpreting it, but it's his eternal sound. And I'm tapping into it, filtering it through this guy, Larry Kutcher. And I got to tell you, and I'm not kidding you, and this sounds pretentious, 80% of the music I write, when I listen to it later, I go, or if I record it, hey, how did I do that? It's like I don't remember doing it because I'm somewhere else, right?
Right.
When I come back and I listen to it, I go, wow, I literally am surprised, you know.
Yeah.
That's the gift that God gave me, you know. So I always tell people, I can't be, you know how musicians, rightfully so in many ways, creative people have a reputation for being sort of arrogant and self-centered and narcissistic. And,
Nah.
you know, we never heard of that, right? You know, I'm so great. I do this. This is mine, you know. And if you work with me, you have to sign a contract. You can't look in my eyes. And, you know, I'm just amazing.
Take out all the green M&Ms.
Right. Exactly. For me, I mean, I love what I do. I throw out 90% of what I do. I'm my biggest critic. I throw out 90% of what I do. But the stuff that I do, you know, that I keep, I enjoy it. But I don't feel that I am the beginning and end of it. You know what I mean? I feel like I'm kind of borrowing it and interpreting it. And it's a blessing, it's an honor and a gift that I'm so grateful for. And you know, so that it's so hard. This is such a large subject, right? Spirituality, God, music. How do you tie it up in 30 minutes into words, right?
Hey, you know, you really can't. You can have this conversation all day.
Exactly. I hope I made sense during some of this. I wasn't rambling too much, but you know,
We'll
just
make it make sense in the editing. How's that?
yeah, cut out all my superfluous meanderings, right? And but I guess so. I guess ultimately, in conclusion, I mean, this whole album is sort of like a thank you to God, you know, for creating me this way and giving me this ability to give it back to folks. Because nothing touches me more when folks are touched, when the music touches people in personal ways, whether it's in a healing way, an emotional way, got them through something. And when people share that with me, for me personally, that's what really makes it all worthwhile. You know, it makes being obscure worthwhile. I'm not a household, you know, well-known artist, but when the music I put out, when people are moved by it, when they're touched by it, when it helps them in some way, that's what matters to me the most. And this album is that's what this whole album is. It's sort of a giving back and a thank you for all of this, you know. And you know, it's a real joy.
So where can people find your music?
Okay, there's several spots. I'm now streaming everywhere. I'm on Spotify,
Mm-hmm.
and I go by very simple Larry Kutcher. So if you just type in Apple Music, I'm on Apple Music. I'm on iTunes. I'm on Spotify. I'm on Amazon Music. I'm on Pandora. Uh, I'm on YouTube Music. So I'm streaming on all your favorite platforms. You will find me there. All you got to do is type Larry Kutcher in the search. I'll come right up. I have a website where you can find all of this. Really easy, larrykutcher.com. So there you will have access to both my albums, all the links on where to get it, some biography, some music on there. So I guess larrykutcher.com, if somebody needed a link, that's like the central thing. Go to larrykutcher.com. I'm also on Bandcamp. So you would go to larrykutcher.bandcamp.com, and my albums are there available to download as high quality lossless virtual albums. And those who buy it on Bandcamp, I have 2 bonus tracks
Oh, nice.
that are available only to people that buy it on Bandcamp. So, and here's the cool thing, folks, about Bandcamp, a little plug for me. Bandcamp is the place where I get 85% of the revenue when you buy my album. On the streaming services, you got to get like 1 million streams to make 5 cents.
I know that's right. I know that's right.
So if those of you, have a heart to want to support me as the starving, struggling artist I am, if you get my thing on Bandcamp, most of what you pay will go to me directly. And so that's a good way. So that's how to find me for sure.
Well, I'll put your links in the description to make it easy for folks to find you. But Larry, thank you so much for coming back on the show, man.
Oh, it's been a pleasure talking with you again, and I enjoy it very much. We have so much in common, and I look forward to behind the scenes, getting together with you, talking with you, and God bless you, brother. Thank you for having me on. I appreciate it.
Anytime, man. And I also want to thank all you folks out there. If you are new to the channel, I hope you'll come back. Please hit that subscribe button. And for my regulars, you guys are awesome because you make it possible for me to do this. Until the next one, everyone, please take care. Be kind to one another. God bless and peace.